Hi guys, this is Judy from Patterns for Pirates, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about swimwear. Swimwear is something that a lot of people have fears about jumping into your first swimsuit, but swim can be a lot of fun and that can actually be very quick to sew up as well. But since it's something new and different for seamstresses, sometimes it can seem a little scary. So I asked all my testers in the group this time if it was their first time sewing swim and what questions they had and what they were nervous about. So I'll be answering those, and hopefully if you have any questions or are nervous about any of the process, this will help. First was fabric type. There's a couple different kinds of swim fabric. The most popular is a nylon spandex. This also happens to be my favorite. Looking at the two, you're probably not going to be able to tell the difference. So this one would be a nylon spandex. It's got a very smooth feeling to it. Swim is always a four-way stretch, so it'll stretch horizontally and it will stretch vertically. There are a few swim fabrics that will stretch more vertically than horizontally. And when I have swim fabric like that, if it's not a directional print, I always cut with the greatest stretch going horizontally around my body. So most of the time it'll be just like any other knit fabric and the horizontal stretch will be greater. Every once in a while I will get a swim where the vertical stretch is greater, and I like to cut the greatest stretch around my body. And you'll notice that on the pattern pieces is sometimes on swimwear it'll say the greatest stretch first stretch and green line, because you'll want the greatest stretch around your body. The other kind of swimwear fabric you can get is a polyester swimwear fabric. I believe this one is a polyester, so you can't tell by looking. They actually feel pretty similar as well. The nylon spandex is going to feel a little bit smoother face. Some might say silky. The polyester, the underside feels not quite as smooth as the nylon. Personally, I've always preferred nylon. I like the way it feels, I like the way it looks. But I have heard the argument that polyester swim actually lasts longer. We don't have a pool, we don't live by a beach, so our swimwear doesn't get like a ton of wear, so it's never been a big issue for me. The nylon also will last, just I have heard that like swim team and things like that who are constantly using the same swimsuit over and over and over and over, sometimes the polyester holds up a little bit better. We'll move on to swim lining. Again, you can get a nylon, and now you can tell the difference in the way it looks on these. This is a nylon lining. It's a nice smooth feeling. This is a poly lining, and it's got some texture to it, and it feels much more cottony. Personally, I prefer the nylon again. I just like the way it feels better. We'll talk about whether you need to line or not. If you're doing a youth swimsuit, most people will line a lighter colored fabric. So this one that I have has an awful lot of white on it. I'll choose to fully line this one. On an adult swimsuit, again, the color of your fabric or weight of your fabric might make you want to fully line versus partially line. One thing you'll notice if you do fully line a suit is it just gives you slightly more coverage, meaning things like belly buttons and things you can't see quite as much if you fully line it. So if you care about that, or if you think your fabric might be sheer when it's wet, you'll want to fully line it. If you're not worried about either of those two things, you can partially line. Partially line means, I will pull this one out. This one is for my daughter, obviously not me. So here is the front, and partially in line. Let me turn it around so you can see it. So here's my front piece. Partially line is just a little liner right here. So that's all it is on the youth. On the women's, you'll have the same little crotch piece here, and then you'll also have another piece on your bust. We call it a bust liner. Now on the women's, you can also choose to fully line your suit and still add the bust liner, because the bust liner is actually where you'll add a little bit of support. You'll have an elastic band underneath, which adds a lot of support for your bust, as well as a place where you can add cups very easily. And a lot of times if you add cups and you don't have something between your cups and your main swimsuit, you can really see the outline of them. And so that's where fully lining and using the bust, that's my favorite. Most of the time, that's what I do. I like having the multiple layers there, but you don't have to. Moving on to cups, I get a lot of questions about swim cups. What size do I need? Where can I get them? Are they going to give me any kind of support? And the answer is there's all different kinds, right? I only have black. I'm actually running really low on swim cups. These are my favorite kind. So they're a triangular shape, but round at the top. These are my personal favorite. These don't really give much support. They're very thin. If you can see, they're very thin. But they're a very thin foam is what it is. I like them because they're thin enough that they don't give me an unnatural shape. Some of the more molded ones can really make me feel like Madonna with like pointy happening. So I don't like that. So I like these really thin ones. It's enough to give you a lot of coverage if it's cold or things like that. Another reason why it does add a little bit more support, even though it's not molded and it's not thick, it's not a push-up, and it's because it doesn't stretch, right? So instead of being stretchy and letting your bust gravity pull the bust down naturally, these do not stretch and will kind of give it a place where with the elastic under and this on your bust, those two together help hold you up. This is just another version of a foam cup. This is called a teardrop. And if you look, and you can see the difference of what I'm talking about of the different shapes. So this one is very soft and very moldable. And this one is more molded, meaning it holds its shape. So it's just preference. This one probably gives you more lift than this one because it's a little thicker and it is molded. But also sometimes I feel like if it's not exactly your shape, it gives you an unnatural shape. There's also reasons that you will want a teardrop versus this one. As you can see, the teardrop is a lot smaller. So if you have a very low cut swimsuit, the teardrops fit in your suit much better than these ones are much wider and can't fit in a very low cut suit. You can also get them in different colors. I happen to have black left because I use my nude up quickly. But you can usually get them in nude, white, and black. I usually buy the most nude because you can put nude in anything. I do tend to sew myself a lot of dark swimsuits because I just happen to gravitate towards that. So I do have some dark ones. Okay, moving on to elastics. I get a lot of questions about swim elastic. Can I use regular elastic in swimwear? No, I absolutely do not recommend that you use regular elastic in place of swimwear elastic. And there's a few reasons. Absolutely, number one, it's not going to hold up for you. It's not meant to hold up in chlorine like swim elastic is. Same reason why you wouldn't use a cotton lycra for a swimsuit. It's not meant for swimming. It's not meant to hold up to chlorine. It's not meant to hold up to salt water, things like that. And if you're putting the time into making something, you want it to last, of course. I'm going to show you my favorite kind of swimwear elastic, but you can always try out a few different ones. These are all cotton swimwear. I find it the easiest to go from regular elastic to cotton swimwear. I feel like it's an easy transition. I get these really big ones from Amazon, but like this is the Dritz. It's the same thing that you can get at Joann's. I just get the really big one because I'm going to use it up. I have a 1/4 inch elastic, which is usually what you use if you're making something like reversible. If you're putting it into a seam that needs elastic. This is 3/8 inch, which is the most common for finishing edges, like around leg holes and things like that. This is 3/4 inch. This is what I like to use for under my bust. I find that it gives me a lot of support there, a lot more than the thinner. Another swimwear elastic that I like is the rubber swimwear elastic. It works great. This is 3/8. I have a teeny tiny piece because my little girl decided to snip mine up after I told her to please leave it alone. But this works great. It's a little tighter than the cotton swimwear. So if you're given a measurement, you might be careful. You might need a tiny bit more length, but most likely not. It's really pretty similar. They're very, very stretchy. She must have sniffed that one. They're very, very stretchy, and so is the cotton. And it's one thing that sets it apart from regular elastic. If you try to use regular elastic, it's not as stretchy. You really need the stretch in swimwear because it has a lot of negativities. Another question I get all the time is, can I skip the elastic completely? Can I just hem it, or can I put a band on it instead? And again, I do not recommend that with swimwear. The elastic's not that hard once you do it a couple of times. It's very easy. It's just like attaching a neckband. It might not be perfect the first time you ever try, but after you do a few, you won't think of it as challenging anymore. Try the elastic. The reason for that is even though swimwear has a lot of spandex in it, it still gets a little waterlogged. It still gets a little looser in the water and with wear, and the elastic doesn't. The elastic does not get waterlogged. It does not stretch out. And so that's why you want it around the edges of a swimsuit, because you don't want the edges of your swimsuit moving around, right? Think about where the edges are. Around the booty, around the bottom, around here. These are all very important places that you don't want your swimsuit getting loose and slipping and sliding. So dive in, use the elastic. You'll be happy that you did. Okay, we'll talk a little about needles and thread. You just need regular thread. Nothing special here, just whatever your favorite brand is. I know some people are only Gutermann. It's fine, does not matter. Regular thread. Next is needle type. You need a stretch needle. Not even a ballpoint, you need a stretch needle. I always recommend a stretch needle for anything with high spandex, and your swimwear is definitely going to be high spandex. So stretch needle is what you need, especially because you're going to be stitching on your elastic as well, which again, you really need a stretch needle for. What machine and stitches you use is really going to be personal preference. You can stitch an entire swimsuit on a regular sewing machine. You just need to use your favorite stretch stitch. What your favorite stretch stitch is really personal preference. You do want one with a good amount of stretch. So if you're unsure if your favorite stretch stitch has enough, sew a little tiny piece and stretch it. If you're popping your threads and your stitches, you need to make it a little wider, a little shorter. That's what gives it more stretch. I would say my favorite, I usually don't use my regular sewing machine to construct my seams. I usually use my serger. But if I use my sewing machine for my top stitching, which I do very often, and you'll notice in ready to wear, if you look at all your ready to wear swimsuits, a lot of ready to wear swimsuits are also top stitched with a zigzag. Very often, a very wide zigzag. I like the triple step zigzag, and just as it comes on my machine, I do not change the width or the length. That is what I tend to use if I'm sewing on my sewing machine and I'm top stitching or anything. You can also use your cover stitch machine if you want to, which I do often. A lot of times I will do my top, my neckline, and my arm size on my cover stitch, and I'll do around the bottoms with a zigzag. And that's because around the bottoms you tend to have to stretch more on that curve, on the booty curve. It's about the only curve you're going to stretch a lot on when you're attaching the elastic, because it curves out. So you're going to have to stretch along that curve so that it hugs your body. And I find it easier on my sewing machine. But again, that's just personal preference. You can sew it on your cover stitch if you have a cover stitch, and I have before. And you can zigzag the entire swimsuit for top stitching as well. And the last thing I'm going to touch on real quick before you dive in is the importance of following that size chart for swimwear. Swimwear has a lot of negative ease, meaning it's smaller than your actual body. Most swimwear runs from a tight one is about 20%, and then a looser one is about 25 to 30. I usually do mine 20-25 range. So on the tighter, it's just what I prefer. I do make my youth a little bit looser because they grow so fast. I always add a little more ease in the youth patterns than the adult. It also has a little bit of negative ease vertically. And this is just so it hugs tight to your body when wet as well. So it's really vital that you grade to all of your measurements, your width measurements, your vertical measurements, especially in a one piece, because it's all one piece. So if you're taller or shorter than the pattern is drafted for, or maybe you have a taller torso or shorter legs, anything like that, it's important to grade, add length, take away length, so that it'll fit you perfectly. A one-piece swimsuit like this Minute Mallet is really simple. It's a great way to learn a little bit more maybe about your body and your measurements and what you need for grading and things like that. Since I have all the standards that I draft to, I know very well how my measurements stack up to the standards. So in all of my patterns, I alter them exactly the same way for anything that I don't hit the standard for. So I am tall, I'm 5'10". I always add length to all of my patterns since I'm 5 inches taller than what I draft for. I have a side waist length, which is armpit to natural waist. It's 1 inch longer than the standard. And then from my waist to my full hip, I'm another 1 inch longer. So for the swimsuit, that's the length that I add. I do not tend to add from my shoulders to my armpit because I happen to be very petite through here. So one measurement we add in is the trunk length, and that's something that you won't see very often in other patterns. And a trunk length goes from shoulder down. I'm going to do it very quickly and not very accurately. Down through your legs and back up to your shoulder. Okay? It does not, you can see, go all along right here. So that would add, right? If I followed all my curves, it just holds tight. And that's your total trunk length. And that will tell you how much you need to add completely on your suit. So my total trunk is 4 inches longer than my size, which I measure, which is a medium. So I need to add 4 inches to my pattern. 2 on the front, 2 on the back. I happen to be proportional where I have 1 above the waist and 1 inch below the waist. And I know that because my side waist, the average is 8 inches and mine is 9. And the waist to hip is a little over 8 and mine's a little over 9. So really measuring your body against those measurement charts will tell you exactly where to add. We do not include a shorten lengthen line because it's different for everybody. And I really encourage you to really get to know your body so that you can do it to every pattern that you do. You know, once you know I'm an inch longer from here to here, I do that on every pattern. Mine, anybody else that I use up, you know, I just know that my body versus the standards, I need an inch here, and then an inch and a half on my inseam. On my arms, I need an inch and a half. You know, things like that can really speed up the process because you're not having to guess every time, right? Another thing is grading between sizes. You'll see a lot of times I hit a few different sizes. Can I just pick the one in between? No. Unfortunately, that's going to give you an ill-fitting suit, just like you would pick up in the store, right? When you pick up in the store, you have to just pick one in the middle. If you're pear-shaped, you know, maybe you need a smaller on top and bigger on the bottom, and you just have to pick in between, or you have to choose if it's going to be too tight here, too loose here. The beauty of sewing is you don't have to. You're making it beautiful, custom, your size, perfect size. And so I really encourage everybody to, especially before a swimsuit, take all your measurements again. Right now, currently, I've got a small overbust, medium full bust, small underbust, medium hip, and I grade my pattern accordingly. Even that underbust, it really makes a difference because like my underbust elastic, if I did not grade, it would be loose there because I'm very petite right here on my ribs, and I wouldn't get as much support. Same with the overbust to full bust. It's important that you grade because if I just did a medium up top, the shoulders would be wider and looser, and it wouldn't support me as, right? The straps wouldn't hold me up as well if I didn't. Now, if I just did a small, then my chest would be squashed a little bit, right? I would be not being able to breathe. And the same, my waist, I forgot my waist is a medium. So I grade back out from my underbust to my waist so that it's not squeezing me in my waist and hip. You'll be so much happier if you grade. If you have any questions, we do have a Grading 101 post on patternsforpirates.com. You can just go to the blog and put grading in there and it'll pop up. Nicole did a great blog about it. You can get a French curve, very inexpensive, on Amazon or your local sewing shop, and it helps tremendously in grading because you can make sure it's nice and smooth, line from size to size. On youth as well, it's really important to grade to the correct sizes. If their length and width are different. My little one happens to be super petite, just like she's built just like me. She's super petite through here and very tall, just like me. So normally I always suggest only go down 2 sizes. So her measurements are an 18-month width with a 4 length. And in all the sewing that I do to her, I usually only grade down 2 widths. So a size 2 width is what I do for her, a 4 length and a 2 width. Because grading can get really challenging once you start doing 3, 4 sizes. But on a swimsuit, it really matters. You really want it fitted if it's where it's supposed to be fitted. And you definitely need the length that they need or they're not going to be comfortable. For the youth, if you're grading either way, shortening or lengthening a wide size range, what I suggest is printing off both, cutting out your width. Cut out your width first, slice it at least 2 times. If you're doing a bigger size, 3 times, and spread it or overlap it until it is the same length as the length you need. Tape it together and then cut it out. It's a lot easier than trying to follow the lines like you can between just 2 sizes. With just 2 sizes, a lot of times you can just follow the lines of the width and the length. But on swimwear, if you're doing a wide range like that, because you have to with swimwear, I really suggest actually taking your piece, that is your width, and moving it and either retracing it or taping it and cutting it out that way. It'll be a lot easier in the long run than trying to guess where that width and length is, right? Especially like on booty curves, the front little crotch curve, the arm side, those are all little things that can get really tricky when you're grading that wide of a range. And actually what I do with my little girl, she's really petite through her shoulders, just like me. I only do a 3 length there instead of a 4. Her trunk length, she really needs the 4. Her overall height is a 4, but she's very small through here, just like me, because even though I'm 5 inches taller, I don't add right there. So she's just like me, where I do a 3 length there. And these are little tiny things that you'll learn as you sew these up. And this swimsuit is perfect to learn all those things for your little one and for yourself or for whoever you're sewing for. And you can just apply that knowledge to all other swimsuits that you make. Youth varying on how much they change and how much your body changes. But for the while, you can just keep doing it the same. I hope that eases your mind a little bit about jumping into swimwear. I'll be doing another video on the Minute Mallet where I'm just sewing up a couple of the different options. So I hope you are brave and go grab some swimsuit fabric, some lining, print your fabric. That would be awesome. Print your pattern out. Make sure you grade it in all the right sizes and join me for sewing too.